It kind of makes me think of like the myth of Sisyphus. Guys like Albert Camus are kind of like, no, one must imagine Sisyphus is happy because every time the boulder rolls down, he gets to catch his breath going back down and plan the next move of pushing it back up. It's kind of like growth, you've hit the plateau with your organic growth. You've reached a new height. You can catch your breath because you know what's working and figure out what you need to do next. And it sounds like paid promotion might be that thing. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Headliner Podcast. We're your hosts, Nicholas and Alyssa, and we're here to keep you in the loop on all the things that you can do to promote your podcast. So Alyssa, what are we talking about today?
So we're going to switch gears from what we normally talk about kind of a little. So we obviously normally talk about marketing, all the things you can do to grow your podcast, right? But today we're going to be talking about kind of the other side of the coin, which is going to be paid podcast promotion.
Okay, interesting. This is a bit of new territory for me. Like, I'm going to be real with you. I'm usually the guy who has his head down just making this stuff. So I'm really curious about what you'll have to say here. And I'm sure I'll barely have anything to add. And honestly, I could probably get up and grab a cup of coffee at some point and no one will even notice.
Nice. And that's kind of true for a lot of podcasters though. Like it's more of like a higher funnel activity in marketing. And it is kind of this weird, like unknown black box in podcasting and kind of in the creative world at large as well. But that's why we're here to talk about it. We're trying to make it not so scary.
Sure. See, that I can relate to. You talk about like a black box for the way that these apps and these algorithms work. And that as a guy who does YouTube a lot, that's familiar. I feel safe there. So yeah, I guess let's dive into it. Why would we do paid advertising? I almost feel like I need to ask what is paid advertising, but I feel like it's exactly what the two words imply it is.
A little, but before we get like too into it, let's kind of set the stage a little bit. It helps me. So I feel like it might help some other people, but we'll see. If not,
yeah, frame
maybe
this
skip.
as me not having a panic attack about being horribly out of my depths, please.
Yeah, if you don't want to listen to my anecdote, just like scrub for like 30 seconds and it'll be fine. But anyways, setting the stage. So let's say that you're a podcaster. Awesome. Yay. And you've been doing this for a while. You're doing kind of all of the things that you feel like you've been told to do, that you should be doing. You're on social media, you're interacting with your audience, you're on YouTube, you're transcribing, you're doing all of the things that we normally talk about. And that's awesome. But you're kind of just hitting this wall. And you initially saw your numbers kind of tick up. You were growing, you were getting newer engagement, reaching new people. But again, at some point, you just kind of hit this, what we like to call like a growth plateau. And it can get really discouraging because especially as you've added these different marketing activities in addition to your podcast, it's adding more time. It's not necessarily making your life easier. It's just, kind of adding a little bit more. It's just like, oh my gosh, is this worth it? Like you maybe start questioning, like, am I doing it right? Is it, a sign that my content might not be good? And you can take a step back and kind of analyze your podcast, think about your audience a little bit. That's, a great kind of first step if you do hit these kind of growth plateaus. But it might be kind of a larger signal that it might be time to try something new and try and reach listeners in a new and different way. And that is kind of, where where paid promotion can step in to kind of support all of that you're already doing, but kind of amplify it and help to further expand that.
Okay. I actually really love that. I love the idea of like, hey, it's good that you've plateaued. This is the moment where you can kind of catch your breath and figure out the next step for like the next mountain you have to climb or whatever, right? And because I'm me, right? Because I'm a philosophy nerd, it kind of makes me think of like the myth of Sisyphus. I don't know if you know it. I'll keep it brief for everyone who doesn't care. Basically, this guy named Sisyphus, he's damned to an eternity of pushing a boulder up a steep hill. Every time he gets to the top, it rolls down. Oh no, it's the worst thing ever. But is it? Guys like Albert Camus are kind of like, no, one must imagine Sisyphus is happy because every time the boulder rolls down, he gets to catch his breath going back down and plan the next move of pushing it back up. So it's kind of like growth. You've hit the plateau with your organic growth and you're sad. Wait, my podcast isn't growing. But wait, you have something that worked. You've reached a new height and now you can catch your breath because you know what's working and figure out what you need to do next. And it sounds like paid promotion might be that thing.
I think so.
Cool. Okay,
But
great.
that was that was definitely a much more like eloquent way of saying like cup half full kind of thing. Before we before getting more into kind of the what's and whys, you mentioned not knowing a ton about paid podcast promotion, and instead of me just kind of taking the mic and just spewing for 15 to 20 minutes, let's ask you some questions, Nicholas.
Sure.
So how would you kind of, thinking about that mini story and what you do know, what would you think paid podcast promotion is? Define it or even conceptualize it.
Well, I guess like the inner creator in me, that's where I'm coming from. So that's how I want to frame it. The inner creator in me hears the word paid promotion and he gets a little nervous, right? It feels like a lot. It feels like there would be a lot of metrics to track and a lot of information to keep a hold of and just bear in mind. And as a person who, again, is just kind of focused on the making of stuff, I almost worry that, maybe it would feel like cheating in a way because the content isn't speaking for itself. One would assume. I have a feeling that I'm like horribly wrong and that I'm just being a potentially cumbersome old fogey about it, right? It's kind of like people who get mad when their favorite band sells out. How dare you get a bigger audience? But, I'd love to be proven wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how a lot of creators feel too, because it's like the content should speak for itself, and largely it is. I mean, you've been able to grow a platform, but kind of the idea of where paid comes in is organic growth can only take you so far. So in the marketing world, there's kind of three pillars of marketing. There's going to be your owned media, your earned media, and your paid media. So owned, that's everything that you do. That's obviously your podcast is going to be kind of paramount there, top of mind. Then you've got things like your social channels, your YouTube, all of that. That's kind of supporting. Those are things that you control the message completely. And you're producing that. And then the earned is those things like word of mouth, or maybe you make it into pod news or some type of like newsletter, something. That's something where what you've done has earned you some notoriety and some more spotlight. So you're kind of tapping into a different audience in a different way, just from something that you've already done. And then paid is kind of an extension of the owned, as you are controlling the message, but you're amplifying the message. So you're literally paying to kind of get it out there into different channels. And there's a number of different ways that you can do it, but I would kind of argue that paid is going to be kind of the easiest way and the most controlled way to get in front of people, ears, eyes in a very targeted way, to especially kind of inject some new growth into stuff that you're already doing. Because again, it's kind of a support beam. You can't get into paid without having any type of baseline. Like you need to have all of the things established in order to say, hey, I'm going to take this to the next level. So that's kind of where paid starts to come in.
Yeah. It's kind of like in baseball, you have spring training, everyone's getting their reps in, they're figuring out what works, what's the batting order going to be, and then the proper season starts, the season being paid advertising.
Exactly. A baseball reference. Wow.
Yeah,
love to hear it.
Shocker. Literally. Who would have thought that Nick would make a baseball reference at 11 a.m. on a Friday?
Not from you. Shocking.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. What paid really does is it does reach new listeners in places they already are, but places you might not already be. And again, there's a number of different ways you can go about paid, but it's literally just saying like, hey, this is me. And you're finding people that are likely to enjoy your content, but might not know about you. It's really great for kind of, again, breaking those plateaus in the short term, as you are, typically, especially in certain types of podcast promotion, you are getting in front of podcast listeners. They are listening. It gets recorded into your host analytics and everything. And you'll probably see a spike in the short term. So you'll be like, oh, like I got 1,000 new listeners or something this week. And that's normally from paid. But then you can, especially if you kind of keep the paid going, you can have this like marketing funnel and you can have this retargeting, all of these like higher level marketing campaign stuff, right? And that's where you can start to especially really see sustainable growth in the long term. But with paid as well, it provides very measurable growth. So a lot of times in marketing, especially, you hear the additive of, I know it's working, I don't know what's working. That's where paid can kind of step in, because especially, there's so many tools out there. If you're interested in finding podcast specific tools, I would recommend looking up Sounds Profitable. They have really good resources on it. Headliner also did a partnership with Sounds Profitable for paid podcast promotion, specifically called the Paid Podcast Promotion Landscape. So I would be interested to know how many times we say paid podcast promotion in this episode. But those are all really great resources to find those tools. But again, it's kind of this black box, especially in the creative world. There's some ambiguity to it. It's just kind of like, So your host, or excuse me, those tools and those brands, they want to earn your trust. So they make everything so trackable, and they try and give you kind of a level of granularity that you don't always get with organic types of marketing, like your YouTube or your Instagram. While those are great, obviously you can see like your impressions, and especially as you start to kind of get up in the numbers, you get a lot more data about like who's listening, where they're listening, like those types of things. But, kind of for the average creator, it's like, okay, I have my baseline numbers, but I don't know like where they're coming from type thing. But that's where paid can really get into stuff, is like ensuring that you have the long-term growth, but it's also very measurable as well.
It almost sounds like, because everything is like kind of veiled behind a black box, just giving you as a user or a creator, whatever label you want to use, like as much information as possible is a good thing, because it allows you to figure out what's working in the context of your show and to just kind of pave your own road, so to speak, as far as like what you're going to do so that you understand what you're doing.
Exactly. And especially with a lot of those tools in the podcasting world, they are a little bit younger. Podcasting is kind of a younger medium still. So they're still trying to build up that notoriety and the trustworthiness and transparency and data. Now, I will say there's a lot of different ways that people go about, getting their traffic, especially with listens. So if you're unsure of where something's coming from, especially if you're using a podcast specific tool, literally ask. I know at Headliner Transparency, with our own tool, that is something that we've really tried to build into it. So you can see exactly like sources and where people are coming from, especially with your targeting kind of stuff. So you just ask. I mean, transparency, you should always know, especially if you're paying for something, what you're getting, where it's coming from, just so you can really attribute, growth and anything to it.
That's so G.I. Joe of you. Knowing is half the battle.
Right.
See, I have more than baseball jokes. I also have 40-year-old cartoon jokes.
I was going to say, you also have obscure media jokes and all sorts of...
Yeah, thank you. That's going on to LinkedIn.
But okay, so we've kind of talked about like a little bit like what is paid podcast promotion, but it's still pretty vague. Like you probably want to know like legitimately, what is it? Like,
yeah, what
does this look like
to do, basically?
Yeah. And there's kind of two different ways that you can go about paid podcast promotion. So the first is going to be within podcasting, and then the second is going to be off platform, kind of outside of podcasting. So the first one, in podcasting, this is probably, I would say, where most podcasters start with any type of paid promotion, mostly because it's what we know. It's what we're most comfortable with. And it has the biggest kind of pro of you are actually paying to market to people that are listening to podcasts actively. Yeah. So it's a very easy ask for kind of targeting purposes, because it's a known behavior. You're like, okay, I'm going to these specific pool of listeners and saying like, hey, here's my podcast, what that can look like. You've probably seen in your different podcast apps like banner ads. So you can see like sponsored or promoted, and you'll see like the little show art and maybe just a very easy way to click and listen to an episode. That's paid podcast promotion within podcasting. Other things that can look like is going to be host-read ads. So you can literally pay another podcaster to read an ad about your podcast. That's a very common practice. I would say it's a pretty successful practice, especially if you have a very similar audience, just because there is a higher degree of trust within that audience to literally anything their host says.
Yeah.
I know there's data out there, and I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head. It is pretty high. I think it's over like 60% of podcast listeners do buy something based off of what their host says.
Sure.
So we know those host-read ads are successful. And especially with podcasting, it's not like you're asking for money. You're just saying like, I'm asking for your time.
Yeah, it kind of combines like the two things in psychology that we know about people. Like, hey, if we feel like we trust somebody and they're saying, hey, check out this podcast because it's really cool and I like it. Yeah, you're probably going to because like you trust this person and it's free. It costs you nothing to listen to like 5 minutes of a podcast to figure out if it's for you or not.
Exactly. And it's something that they already do. So it's very easy. So
Yeah.
humans don't like hard things. So that's such an easy ask.
See, here I am dropping like psychology and philosophy, and you just said like the unifying truth of the universe. Humans don't like hard things.
I simplify it down, man.
Yeah.
I gotta it's Friday. I gotta do what I can. But similar to not necessarily similar to host read ads, but podcast related ads, you can actually record an ad yourself or make an ad, however you want to make an ad, and you can put it up onto podcast marketplaces and things like your host. Like I think Podbean does a really good job about this. They have a really big ads marketplace. You can select kind of, what types of shows you want to appear on to make sure there's somewhat of an audience alignment, but then it'll dynamically insert your ads into other podcasts that are within this marketplace. So again, you're still reaching podcast listeners in a place that actively listen to podcasts. It's just you speaking, not the host, which, that could even be better. Because what if you have, this amazing, perfect podcast voice and it's awesome and people are like, oh, I love that.
Or what if you have this very, I don't know, aggressively strange way of bringing up trivia that just needs to be conveyed. It can't be explained, right? You have a je ne sais quoi to you.
Exactly. But those are kind of all of the in podcasting, and I'm sure there's more, but those top of mind, those are kind of, that's what's in my script. Those are those in podcasting types of ads, the things that podcasters are familiar with, the things we actually see in our app and hear within our ears. Those are going to be those types of things. Kind of the downside to those is there is a very finite audience and there's only so much targeting you can do because there is a finite pool of people. You can say like, hey, I want people that are interested in business podcasts. And it's like, okay. And they have to be within the US, those types of things that really starts to cut down on how many people you can target. And software can only go so far with, especially your budget and how they target. So there's kind of this like bid system that goes into it. And if you get into podcast promotion, paid podcast promotion, you'll kind of figure this out. It gets more kind of deeper within some targeting when you have those higher level budgets, just because you can pay more for certain actions. So if you start out with a smaller budget, like maybe $100 or a couple $100, there's only so much targeting you can kind of add just because the software wants to make sure that it's setting you up for success and it can deliver on its promise, but it just might be a little bit more broad targeting. So those are kind of the downsides to those in-platform podcasting, paid podcasting type promotions. That's all.
Sure. What about the other side of that coin? Because you've mentioned in podcasting several times, so I'm assuming there's out podcasting.
Yeah, I don't think there's a technical term necessarily. I call it off-platform because that's where my brain went with it. But yeah, anyways, it does exist. And that's probably any type of advertising you've seen, not in a podcast or in a podcast app. So it could be something as big as a billboard or something as small as a social media ad. Not to say that those are small, because I'll get into that in a second, but that's literally just anything kind of not native to podcasting.
Sure.
So again, I would think kind of more digital marketing would be the most successful, as we are a digital medium. So those are going to be things like social media ads, YouTube ads, and web display ads. Those are probably, I would say, the most popular types of off-platform paid podcast promotion available to people. And they, the exact opposite, obviously, of in-platform as they're off-platform, right? So the big pros to those are it is a massive pool of people and potential listeners out there. I mean, like podcast listeners, there's millions of them. Obviously, millions is a big number, but off-platform, there's billions of people out there. So, I mean, you could, in theory, reach a much larger pool of people. And with that, you can have much more granular, kind of deeper level targeting options available to you, especially when you get into, again, those higher level kind of campaigns, or just you start really like figuring out like on social media, like how to make an interest group, how to really target those, how to add some demographic data. Like you can get really into it. I used to work at a social ad agency.
Yeah, I was going to say there was like a spark in your eye when you brought this up. I'm like wading through the abyss and you're like, yeah, this is easy.
It's kind of crazy. Like you can, especially like companies, you can like and if you have access to like emails of like people that listen, like I think Substack does that. Anyways, if you have access to that type of data, you can literally upload it into certain types of platforms. So you have people, and then you can say, hey, I have this list of 1,000 people. These platforms will say, hey, here's a list of another 5,000 people that are so similar to them in age, like any type of demographic, and then of course interest as well, because on the internet everything is pretty trackable, which is a little terrifying.
I was trying not to play the "this sounds like a nightmare if you look at it a certain way" card, but thanks for doing that for me.
In the world of paid podcast promotion, it's great because you can say you can really start to target people. So that's going to be the biggest kind of pro to this, is you can really have very detailed targeting. So you can reach these people in an incredibly targeted way with an interesting offer of your podcast. So that's the biggest pro to it. The con, complete opposite of in podcasting. It's a little bit of an harder ask. Sometimes you don't know if these people actually listen to podcasts. That stuff is a little bit harder to track. So it's kind of that. And then also like you might just be on social media and you don't know if they're listening to a podcast, actively listening to a podcast. They probably know what it is at this point, that's a pro for you. But yeah, the con, it's a lot harder because now they're on one platform or they're in one place. They're consuming one type of medium. You're asking them to click on your ad, click on your audio display unit, and now take time away from what they're currently doing, shift behaviors completely, or even open up a different app. Maybe download an app, kind of depends on the person again. So now you're asking for a newer behavior. So that's a much harder thing because, again, people like easy things. They don't like hard things.
Look at that. There's a theme emerging here. No, I can speak to this a little. Like, I started a podcast in 2018 or whatever, right? Just a little movie podcast, doing it with my buddy. And we did try paid advertising on Instagram. We would create our audiograms with specific tools that may come up later. We put them on Instagram. We'd put in paltry sums of money just to see what happened. And the exact thing you described was our outcome. The videos did great. People liked them. The ads did great. They didn't lead to conversion outside of engagement on platform. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did, but that was the problem because you were asking a big thing of people. Hey, here's a minute of a 1-hour show. Go listen to it and lose the full video that you were just shown. And, there's a lot of little asks. I think the market has probably matured to a place where people understand the buy-in now more, but it was interesting and it was what you're describing. It's hard to ask people to do things.
And that seems like a really great segue into kind of the next section, what you should look for from your paid podcast promotion. So those different types of metrics. So you mentioned doing a social media ad. Social media ads are so great for building up awareness, which is going to be types of impressions. So you're just getting in front of people. You said the videos did well, so you obviously got eyes, you got engagement on that platform, and you're just kind of getting people familiar with you. So that's impressions is kind of that base metric that you should look for. You're going to see that a lot on social media. That's going to be probably the thing that is pushed the most. But for podcasting, obviously you're trying to chase those listens. You're trying to chase those follows. You want long-term growth from your podcast. While those short-term spikes are great, they kind of, they give you, hope, motivation, saying hey, my stuff is worth it.
They're great validation, but I feel like if you're trying to build something that could stand on its own 2 feet over time, yeah, you need the conversions. You need to turn somebody from an Instagram follower into an RSS subscriber, right? Because that RSS subscriber is what's actually propping up your business or whatever you're doing this for.
Exactly. And that's where those in-platform paid podcast promotion tools, those are great. And then there's also tools out there that are designed for off-platform advertising, but they're designed for podcasters. So those metrics that they're trying to chase are going to be a little bit more, oriented towards the podcaster. So they're going to be listens and follows, not necessarily trying to just drive impressions. So when I say a listen to, there is, you have to kind of think strategically. And you want to have, obviously, good quality listens. You don't want just, this random, like, oh, somebody in, what's a random country right
Lithuania.
now? Lithuania. Lithuania,
Sure.
great.
Why not? I don't know why Lithuania. We're not gonna investigate it, but
yeah, like Joe in Lithuania, like listen to your podcast, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but maybe, Joe's not your target audience. So you got the listen, but Joe's probably not going to follow you. He's probably not going to subscribe in the long term, but you got to listen. That's great. But that's when you still want like those really, and again, that's kind of the first like meaningful step, because now your actual show is gaining traction, but you want the retention, and that's going to be kind of that ultimate metric. So that's where you have to be really thoughtful about the types of tools that you're using and making sure that the traffic that they're buying is qualified. It adheres to kind of those targeting standards, again, that you put in place when you're actually building a podcast campaign. And then, again, it's like genuine traffic. It's not, because bots are out there. Bots can generate traffic. So you kind of need to be aware of that.
Like, I think I don't know if we've talked about it on this show, but a big term in the space is IAB compliance.
Yes.
So making sure those listens are IAB compliant, making sure that they're from people that actually speak the language that your show is in. They aren't bots, all that kind of stuff. It's important. And this goes beyond podcasting. This is all types of content. In general, you would rather have 10 people listen to 10 minutes of your show than 50 people listen to like 30 seconds or a minute. Right? Or whatever the math is, where the total listen time is identical, but the average duration is like significantly skewed.
Exactly. And that's where you mentioned the IAB. IAB, that's literally having a 60-second playtime. So somebody actually listened to 60 seconds of your audio fully. They didn't like listen to 20 seconds and then leave. They listened to the 60 seconds. So that's going to be the first step when you're looking for a tool. Definitely make sure that they use IAB, they are IAB compliant. And if you can't find that information or you don't know, again, just ask somebody at the company. Like, they know that information. They have to give you that information. So just, again, ask, because transparency is key with all of this. And then kind of the next thing that I would tell podcasters to look at if they're doing off-platform advertising is going to be if a unit is going to be click to play or if it's like an autoplay type thing. So we've all been on a web page where we're scrolling and then we just hear sound and we're like, oh my God, where's that coming from? And it's just this like random YouTube clip that's playing and now it's taking over your screen and you're just like, where's the X button? Why can't I click out of it? Those are those autoplay things. And somebody did pay to place that on your screen so you're seeing it. And especially as you have, that 30 seconds of panic, that's counting towards their ad. So you kind of want to think about like, okay, do I want those impressions? And do I want the like, oh my gosh, like this is playing in the background? Do I mute it? Do I click it? Or do you want somebody that sees the ad and they're like, oh, what's that? And they make an intentional effort. They have to go and click it. Those are going to be click to play ads. And that's where very specifically podcast ad tech has done a great job about ensuring that people like see these ads, they're interested enough in them and they click them and then they fully listen to the 60 seconds. And then that counts as a qualified listen and they have the opportunity to further engage by, again, clicking on the ad and then going to listen to the podcast. So that's how you're going to get that's how you're going to get the impression, the listen, and then hopefully the ultimate conversion and the metric that we should all be chasing, which is going to be retention and followership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this makes perfect sense to me. This I get. We talked about SEO a bit last week, and obviously you want to make sure that your stuff is going on a website that is going to actually be doing SEO right. It's a well-optimized site that loads at a decent clip. It's a site that doesn't have a million pop-ups because you want your content to look good on it and you want your content to shine, and you're putting in the work into sharing a high quality clip from your show or an ad for your show, whatever you end up sharing. So obviously you just want to make sure it's going somewhere that'll actually take the time to respect that.
Exactly. And that's kind of, there's obviously a little bit of buyer beware because within podcasting, attribution can get a little murky. So kind of make sure that, people, again, have the tracking availability with integrations. So again, if you don't know, just ask. Ashley Carmen over, I think she is Bloomberg. She is the author of the Soundbite newsletter. She does amazing work within podcasting and just audio space in general. But I think 2 years ago, she wrote an article all about this and just, again, kind of that buyer beware. It's called Mobile Game Ads Are Boosting Podcast Follower Counts.
Yep, I remember this article.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I would encourage you to go kind of check that out and see, she breaks it down a lot more eloquently than I could ever hope to. But just kind of, again, that buyer beware and just ensuring that when you are buying ads, they are maybe these click-to-play solutions, or they are a little bit more transparent with how they're getting this actual data and tracking the data and then reporting it back to you.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. There are no such things as bad questions, right? If you need clarity on something, just get the clarity. It's much...
Especially if you're paying for it.
Yeah. Like the second, especially when money factors into things, like if you don't fully understand something, ask and pay attention to the answer, pay attention to the confidence behind the answer, and trust your gut. But at least give yourself like enough context to like have something to inform your feeling,
Mm-hmm.
On that note, okay, I've got a question for you. Is there anybody anywhere of any make and or model, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that can help with this?
So there is. I will say once again, I would check out Sounds Profitable or the paid podcast promotion landscape. There's only so many times you can say it successfully and then it falls apart.
Yeah, I don't even want to try.
But check that out. It does break it down between like the different types of ad tech that you can buy and work with. But you may ask, why does Headliner, this video editing tech creative tool suite, why are they involved in this? Well, we do have another side of the business, and it's called Podcast Promo. And Podcast Promo, it is one of those off-platform paid podcast promotion solutions that allows you to target people on the web. So it's kind of an expansion. If you're familiar with our Disco tool, which allows you to embed a couple of different of your episodes into relevant blog articles that you've written, so your owned media, if you will, to kind of tie everything back. It's kind of an expansion of that. So we can actually place those types of units onto other websites, and you can literally pay to have your podcast appear in them. So you can reach people in a really targeted way. They are click-to-play solutions. We do adhere to the IAB, and we have all sorts of integrations with people to kind of, ensure that we are able to communicate our data to you in a transparent, respectful way. We have 6 different integrations, and I can't name them off the top of my head, but we have an article on our blog that talks all about them that, believe it or not, I did write.
Look, you're a superstar. Yeah. You've got your hand in a million different hats, whatever the saying is, so I don't expect you to know everything off the top of your head.
We're a small team over here, guys. I don't think people realize how small Headliner is, but yeah, so Podcast Promo, I would check it out. If you have questions, you can email us at support@headliner.app or find our lovely account head, Jesse, on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say his email because I didn't ask to say his email and put it out on the internet. You could probably figure it out. But anyways, find Jesse on LinkedIn.
For what it's worth, I appreciate that you said on LinkedIn, because where my mind went is when you said you could just find Jesse, I'm imagining like some sort of All the President's Men situation where a PI is meeting in like a garage being like, I found him.
I mean,
don't do that.
Happen.
Whatever you do, don't do that. For
Jesse's such a nice person. Please don't do that to Jesse.
Please don't hire a detective to find Jesse. Just look him up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Jesse, headliner.app. He'll pop up right off the bat. Or again, email us at support@headliner.app or go to our website and fill out the I have questions form and we'll find you.
That's what we do. Transparency is important to us. We like answering questions. So, yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, I can exhale. I can breathe out because this paid promotion stuff isn't as scary as I thought it was. And I feel like I learned something today. And hopefully everyone listening learned something too. Even if it's just the amazing cognitive reframe that is, plateauing isn't bad, it just means you can spot your next mountain. On that note, thank you to everyone for listening. We'll be back soon enough with more podcast promotion tips or just general podcast production know-how stuff for you. Bye.